Hello friends, today we will be discussing the Lok Sabha or the lower chamber of the Indian Parliament. The House of the People is commonly known as the Lok Sabha. It is the lower house or the popular chamber of the Indian Parliament. The members of the Lok Sabha are elected directly by the people. Unlike many other constitutions of the world, the total number of members in the Lok Sabha has to be elected or has been fixed by the Constitution of India. Originally, this number was fixed at 500. But with the 7th Constitutional Amendment and followed by the reorganization of the states in 1951, this number has been raised to 520. Later on, with the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, this number was further raised to 545. At present, the total number of members in the Lok Sabha happen to be 550. Of these 550 members, a maximum of 20 seats have been reserved for the members from the Union territories. The remaining 530 members are to be elected directly by the people from territorial constituencies of the different states. For the purpose of election, each of the state is being divided into a number of territorial constituencies based on its population, which is in proportion to the total population of all the states. And in addition to this, the President may nominate 2 members from the Anglo-Indian community if he or she feels that they are not adequately represented in the Parliament. Now let us see how the electoral arrangement for the Lok Sabha actually works in India. The members of the Lok Sabha are elected directly by the people. As being already stated, for the purpose of election, each state has been divided into a number of territorial constituencies based on its population. Constituencies are more or less of the same size with regard to its population. Now, while discussing the electoral arrangement of the Lok Sabha, it is equally worthwhile to mention the Article 81, which ensures uniformity of representation in 2 respects. Uniformity is being maintained in between the states, and secondly, uniformity of representation is to be retained so far as the territorial constituencies are concerned within a state. Now let us see how it is ensured in our constitution. To ensure the uniformity of representation, the Constitution provides that each of the states shall be allotted a total number of seats, and the ratio of this number will be in proportionate to the population as far as practicable, that it is same for all the states. Secondly, to ensure uniformity in representation, the Constitution further provides that each of the state is to be divided into a number of territorial constituencies based on its population, and the ratio between the seats allotted to these constituencies and the population is, as far as practicable, the same within the state. Now, while we were discussing about the electoral arrangement of the Lok Sabha, it becomes absolutely clear to us that the Constitution has abandoned the system of proportional representation. Instead, it has adopted a single-member constituency system with reservation of seats for the backward communities, namely the scheduled caste and the scheduled tribes. Now, why the framers of the Indian Constitution has abandoned the system of proportional representation? 2 major reasons cited in this regard are the following. First of all, it has been argued that the system of proportional representation demands a vast rate of literacy. The rate of literacy in this respect is expected that the voter should be literate enough or voters should be literate to the extent of identifying the numerals and in marking them on the ballot paper, indicating their preferences. Now, this is almost a sheer myth in a country like India, where a vast section of the population happen to be illiterate. Secondly, the system of proportional representation is a misfit for a parliamentary system of government. One of the disadvantages of the system of proportional representation is the fragmentation of the legislature into various small groups. Now, this implies that whenever or any time a group is displeased with the governmental activities, then they might withdraw their support from the government, and in return the government will fall into pieces, which is again not desirable at a frequent level. Now let us see the essential conditions which are necessary for a person to become a member of the Lok Sabha. First of all, a person has to be a citizen of India. Secondly, he or she must have reached the age of 25 years. Thirdly, the person must have all the necessary qualifications as prescribed by the law of the Parliament. And finally, the person must not be of unsound mind. Now, when the essential qualifications are being mentioned in the Constitution, it is well understood that the criteria for disqualifications would be mentioned as well. Let us examine the conditions when a member of the Parliament can be disqualified. First of all, no person can become members of both the houses of the Parliament or both the Parliament and that of the state legislature. Secondly, it has been pointed out that if a member remains absent for more than a period of 6 weeks without prior permission of the House, then the person is liable to be disqualified. Thirdly, if a person occupies an office of profit under the government of union or of the state government, shall be liable to be disqualified. And finally, if the person voluntarily accepts the citizenship of any other country. Now, in pursuance with the qualifications as being mentioned above, or in pursuance with the Article 372, which dealing with matters on election, the Representation of People's Act of 1951 laid down certain essential criteria for disqualification of a membership. First of all, a member must not have been found guilty by a court or an election tribunal of certain election of offences or corrupt practices in the election. Secondly, he must not have been convicted by a court of any offence and sentenced to imprisonment for more than 2 years. Thirdly, he must not have failed to lodge an account of his election expenses within the stipulated time and in the manner as prescribed by the law. Fourthly, he must not have been dismissed for corruption or disloyalty from government services. Fifthly, he must not be a director or a managing agent, nor hold an office of profit under any corporation in which the government has any financial interest. And finally, he must not have any interest in government contracts, execution of governmental work or service. In fact, it is required for a candidate who wishes to stand for election to the Lok Sabha that he or she must not incur any of these disqualifications at the time of filing his or her nomination papers. Now let us see the term of the Lok Sabha. The normal term of the Lok Sabha is for 5 years. It begins from the date of its first meeting. According to the Constitution of India, the President is empowered to dissolve the Lok Sabha even before the completion of its full tenure. And the action on part of the President cannot be challenged in any court. The President is also empowered to extend the normal tenure of a Lok Sabha, and he can do so only when a national emergency is being declared throughout the country under Article 352. Now, here it must also be noted that the President cannot extend the period of the session of the Lok Sabha for more than 6 months once the emergency ceased to operate. Now let us examine the session of the House of the Lok Sabha. The Lok Sabha is expected to meet twice a year, and the in-between period of the Lok Sabha should be less than of 6 months tenure. The time and the date of the Lok Sabha, however, is to be fixed by the President of India, who summons the House. And it is the President of India who prorogues the House as well. The Lok Sabha, in order to have a session legally valid, requires a minimum number of members to be present in the House, which is also known as the quorum. The quorum of the Lok Sabha is 1/10 of the total strength of the House. Without a quorum, the Lok Sabha cannot transit or cannot effectively function, nor can it take any major decisions on legal matters. The Lok Sabha is being presided by the Speaker of the House, and in his absence, it is the Deputy Speaker who takes over his functions. The debates and discussions in the Lok Sabha are usually carried out either in English or in Hindi, but in case a member is uncomfortable in either of the two languages, then he or she is liable to speak in his or her own mother tongue. Now let us examine the powers and functions of the Lok Sabha. Now, from our discussions on the electoral arrangement of the Lok Sabha, it becomes absolutely clear that being a house which is composed of the elected members of the parliament occupies an important position in the parliament. Now, the powers and functions of the Lok Sabha are wide and varied. For our convenience, the powers and functions of the Lok Sabha can be discussed under the following heads. First of all, the legislative powers of the Lok Sabha. The first and the foremost function of the Lok Sabha is with regard to its legislation. An ordinary bill is initiated in either of the two houses of the parliament, and the bill, in order to become an act, requires the approval of both the houses. Now, in case of a disagreement between a bill or over a bill, it is the President who may call a joint session of both the houses in order to resolve the deadlock situation. Now, Lok Sabha can make laws on any of the items included in the union list or in the concurrent list, but so far as the items on the state list are concerned, it requires to fulfill certain conditions. Let us see those conditions in the following manner. First of all, in order to make a law on any of the items under the state list, Rajya Sabha is required to pass a special resolution. Secondly, Lok Sabha can make a law on any of the items on the state list, provided there is a declaration of national emergency throughout the country under Article 352. Thirdly, if two or more states require or request the Lok Sabha to intervene on the matters related to the state list. And finally, the Lok Sabha can make a law on any of the items on the state list if it is a matter of international treaty or convention. Now, so far as the residuary powers of the Lok Sabha are concerned, they are in complete command over it. Now, let us examine the financial powers of the Lok Sabha. The financial powers of the Lok Sabha implies a much wider area. In fact, apart from the ordinary bill, the money bill can originate only in the Lok Sabha alone. After getting its assent in the Lok Sabha, though it is passed into the Rajya Sabha, but the task of the Rajya Sabha members is to give its assent within a stipulated period of 14 days. Now, in doing so, the Rajya Sabha may give its recommendations on a particular affair of a money bill, but it is up to the will of the Lok Sabha to accept them or not. In fact, whether a bill is a money bill or not is being decided by none other but the Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Now, apart from the money bill, the annual budget is presented before both the houses of the Parliament, but it is adopted by the Lok Sabha alone. Thirdly, the Rajya Sabha has practically no say with regards to the demands of funds made by the different ministries and the departments, as this is the exclusive domain of the Lok Sabha. Fourthly, the Lok Sabha has its dominance over the contingency fund of India. It controls the contingency fund which is being used for unforeseen reasons. Finally, it can be said that the Lok Sabha is solely responsible to study the report being presented by the Public Accounts Committee and the Estimate Committee. Now let us examine the executive powers of the Lok Sabha. The executive powers of the Lok Sabha actually implies the control of the legislature over the executive. As we all know that the Constitution of India suggests that the Union Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Ministers are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. So this means that whenever a vote of no confidence is passed in the Parliament, in the Lok Sabha, then the Prime Minister and the Union Council of Ministers had to tender their resignation. Now, what amounts to a vote of no confidence? If the Lok Sabha rejects any government bill or a budget or disapproves an official policy, then this may amount to the expression of a vote of no confidence, and accordingly the ministry had to resign. Now, apart from this, the legislature or the Lok Sabha has also several other devices to exert its control over the executive, like the calling attention motion, the questionnaire and subsidiary questions, the 0 hour, the question hour, tabling motions on matters of public importance for discussion, the no confidence motion, and so on. Now let us examine the judiciary powers of the Lok Sabha. The Lok Sabha shares equal authority with that of the Rajya Sabha in taking punitive actions against the outsider or a member committing a breach of privileges. Along with the Rajya Sabha, the Lok Sabha together can establish a high court in the Union Territory. And so far as the removal of the Chief Justice and the other judges are concerned, Lok Sabha shares equal authority with that of the Rajya Sabha in doing so. Now let us examine the powers related to the constitutional amendment. Lok Sabha plays a crucial role related to the constitutional amendments. It shares equal authority with that of the Rajya Sabha in this respect. Now, apart from these formal powers, Lok Sabha also has certain other miscellaneous powers. Let us examine them in the following manner. First of all, the Lok Sabha shares equal authority with that of the Rajya Sabha so far as the election and removal of the president is concerned. Secondly, the Lok Sabha elects the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker of the House. Thirdly, the Lok Sabha, along with the Rajya Sabha, can establish a court of martial law at the time of emergency for delivering judgment against offences committed by the civilians. Fourthly, both the houses is empowered to give its approval on the emergency which is being declared by the President of India. Fifthly, it has been pointed out that the Lok Sabha along with the Rajya Sabha must discuss on the reports given or submitted by the autonomous agencies like Union Public Service Commission, Minority Commission, Language Commission, Finance Commission, and so on. Sixthly, the Lok Sabha also provides important information regarding our governmental policies. Now, these data and information not only enlighten the floor of the House, but it also helps to enlighten the vast population over a governmental issue. Finally, the Lok Sabha also helps to formulate the public opinion. And in return, the public opinion also helps the democracy to flourish even further. Now let us see the other powers apart from the miscellaneous powers which are being assigned to the Lok Sabha by the Constitution. The other powers can be summed up in the following manner. First of all, according to Article 2 of the Indian Constitution, the Parliament by its discretion can create a new state or include any part within the territory of India. Secondly, according to Article 3, the Parliament can also reorganize the states and create a new state. So it implies that the Parliament is empowered to create a new state, alter the territorial boundaries of the state, and can even change the name of the state. Thirdly, according to Article 16, the Parliament can provide additional residential qualification for jobs under the state government or that of the union territories. Not only that, the Parliament has the final decision so far as the creation or the elimination of the second chamber of a state legislature is concerned. It can do so provided it has the vote of 2/3 majority of the total strength of the total state legislature, and along with it the total number of members present at the time of voting. So to conclude, one may observe that Lok Sabha, by making a comparative analysis between the two houses, one may get a general impression that the Lok Sabha is much more powerful than the Rajya Sabha. The Lok Sabha, being composed of the elected members, has an edge over the Rajya Sabha. But at the same time, it should also be borne in mind that the framers of the Indian Constitution has adopted the principle of a federation. Now, it means that there is unanimity among the framers of the Constitution in creating a balance between the representation of the people and the representation of the federating units. So, in conclusion, it can be said, keeping the aspirations of the forefathers, one may say that one should be very cautious while making an assessment of the house. In fact, one should not have an assessment of the house in such a manner so as to exalt the one and to denigrate the other. In fact, what is desirable is to establish a harmonious and a relation of cooperation between the two houses.